Question 41. Jay Asan, CFA, a credit analyst with high return investments, has been working on the credit analysis of SNJ Incorporated. In his report, Jay Asan has written that SNJ Incorporated has been using aggressive accounting policies for the last 3 years. This analysis is part of A, capacity. So we can rule this out. Capacity is going to refer to more so the kind of debt levels of the company and whether they can service that debt. So whether they're making enough cash to service debt, that's going to be what capacity is related to. B, character. This certainly could be related to character. Aggressive accounting policies are kind of going to be dictated by management. And so the character is normally focused on management practice and track record strategy, that type of stuff. So the character is kind of dictated by management who can implement these types of policies. Looking at the types of policies can give you a flavor for management and their character, I guess. And then C, collateral. This is more so related to debt obligations again, and what assets they kind of have that are pledged as collateral for loans or other lines of credit and whatnot. Go with answer B, character. Question 42. An investor with an investment horizon of 5 years is most likely facing which of the following risks if the Macaulay duration is 7 years? So we've got A, lower interest rate risk, B, higher interest rate risk, or C, no risk. The investor is hedged against interest rate risk. So we can rule out C right away. If our investment horizon does not line up with our Macaulay duration, then we are not hedged against interest rate risk. If these lined up, then we would be. So those being mismatched, we are going to be subject to either lower or higher interest rate risk. So in this context, interest rate risk is essentially the risk of the bond being hit by price. So if interest rates rise, the risk is rates going up, our bond price goes down, and then the price doesn't have time to kind of recover back up before, sorry for my bad drawings here. It doesn't have time to recover before you get to your date that you need the money for. Thinking about it from a person, if I have a 7-year bond in this instance, but I'm going to need the money in 5 years, if the price of that bond drops, I might be forced to sell it at the end of 5 years before the price recovers. So in that instance, am I going to have lower interest rate risk or higher interest rate risk? I'm going to have higher interest rate risk because the duration of my bond portfolio is greater than my investment horizon. On the flip side, so if this was flipped, if we had a bond portfolio or if we had an investment horizon of 7 years, but a bond duration of 5, the risk on the flip side is reinvestment risk. So my bond matures at 5 years, but then I still have 2 more years that I need to earn a return for, and there's no guarantee that I'll be able to reinvest that at higher or the same interest rate. So that's kind of the flip side of interest rate risk, which is what we have a higher amount of in this instance. Answer B. Question 43. A financial analyst needs to assign a value to a 5-year illiquid bond with an annual coupon payment of 5.5%. In his analysis, the financial analyst highlights 2 corporate bonds having the same credit quality. So we've got a 6-year bond, 5.5 coupon, and that's priced at 104. And then a 4-year bond, 6.5 coupon, priced at 107. So this bond is going to be between these 2 bonds. Using the matrix pricing technique, the estimated price of the liquid bond is closest to. So essentially what we're going to do is, since we have a 6-year bond and a 4-year bond, we're going to price these 2 bonds and find their yield to maturity, which we can do based on all the information we're given. And then we're going to take the average of those yield to maturities, take the 5-year time horizon of this bond, and the 5.5% coupon to calculate the price. So this is going to be pretty calculator heavy, but I think it'll be good to walk through all of these. Here, let me pull this in first. So these are going to be basically all the different inputs that we have for these bonds. I'll put it over here by the calculator. Oh, that doesn't work. All right, we'll just have to do some scrolling. That's fine. So for bond 1, our yield and maturity, we're solving for I. I have all these punched in now. So we're going to have N of 6, present value of 104, which is the current price, payment of 5.5, which is our coupon, and then the future value, which will be par at maturity of 100. So we're going to compute the interest rate there. So we get 4.719, which is the yield we got right here. And then for that second bond, we have these numbers here. So we'll plug in 4 for N. I know it's a little tedious, but bear with me. We're going to end up solving for interest rate, so we'll leave that alone for now. Our present value is 107. And coupon is 6.5. And fair future value stays the same, so we can compute that interest rate there. So we get 4.5467, which is what I have here. So then for the bond number 3, now we're given I and we are given N, payment and future value. So now we can solve for present value. So our I is going to be these two values averaged together, and then all the others are given based on the bond info. So we have N of 5, payment of 5.5, and then we're going to mature at par. So let's bring calculator back up and solve for this one. So our N, we have at 5. I, we have at 4.63. Present value is not given. Par is going to be future value of 100 and payment at 5.5. So from here, we compute present value and we get minus 103.8055. So we've got 101.37, 103.78, and 104.56. I think we will go with answer B here. It's closest to, there's a lot of decimals over in here, so we could have had some rounding differences. But I feel good about going with answer B. Question 44. A bond has a duration of 10.62 and a convexity of 91.46. For a 200 basis point increase in yield, the bond's approximate percentage price change is closest to. So let's pull in the formula here. Our estimated price change is going to be negative duration times the change in yield. So the change in yield is 200 basis points or 2%. And then we're going to add 0.5 times convexity to that. So this is what that looks like down here. So we have parentheses here, and then this is all going to be in one parentheses, which is going to be important for our multiplication here. So we're going to have 0.5 times 91.46, which is that convexity, and then we're going to so we'll do this, and then we'll multiply by the change in yield squared, which is 0.02 to the second power. So this should be one number that you get, and then the first parentheses here should be the other number that you get. And when you do that math out, you get minus 0.1941, which is going to equal 19.41%. Answer B. Question 45. The 2-period spot rate, S2, is 9%, and the 1-period spot rate, S1, is 4%. The 1-year forward rate for 1 year from now, F11, is closest to. So we're going to be using this formula right here, which is basically the 2-year spot rate is going to be equal to the 2-year spot rate is going to be 1 plus S2 squared is going to be equal to 1 plus the spot rate, which is 4%, and then 1 plus the forward rate next year. So these two compounded together should be equal to the 2-year spot rate. And so we're given this number and this number essentially. So we're going to just need to do algebra to figure out what that forward rate should be. So here's what that looks like. So we've got 1.09 squared, which works out to 1.1881, which is going to be equal to 1.04 times 1 plus x. And then when we divide both sides by 1.04, we get 1.1424 equals 1 plus x. Subtract 1 from this side, and we get x equals 14.24%, which is going to line up right there with answer B. Question 46. Which of the following statements is or are most accurate? So we've got 1, 2, and 3 here, and we need to pick which of these are or are not accurate. Statement 1, the expected loss is equal to default risk multiplied by loss severity. So this is going to be a correct statement. Default risk is probability of default. Loss severity is loss given default. Multiplying PD and LGD gives us our expected loss. Statement 2, the difference in yield between a credit risk and credit risk-free bond of similar maturity is called the spread risk. So this is not called spread risk, this is called credit risk. So that's going to be an incorrect statement for that reason. Credit risk is, or credit spread is basically what it says, the spread between a bond with credit risk and a credit risk-free bond. And spread risk is the risk of spreads changing. So this is more default related. This is more so spreads changing related. And then 3, bond prices are inversely related to spreads. This is going to be correct. Higher spread equals higher yield, which is going to equal a lower bond price. So we've got 1 and 3 are good. So A, 2 is accurate. No. B, 1 and 3 are accurate. Yes. And C, all are accurate. That'll be incorrect. We'll go with answer B. Question 47. As an investor, you must always be wary of where the bond is traded and issued, as this provision directly affects the tax status, regulations, and law. Which of the following bonds is issued internationally, has lesser regulatory requirements, disclosure, and listing levels compared to other bonds? So we've got A, Euro bonds, B, global bonds, or C, foreign bonds. So comparing these 3 options, Euro bonds are going to be governed only by international law, and essentially they're not really confined to any one jurisdiction. They're subject to international law, which does tend to have lesser regulatory requirements, disclosure, and listing levels. And then comparing that to global bonds. So a global bond is going to be issued in the Euro bond market, but it's also going to be issued domestically somewhere. So it's going to be kind of subject to 2 different regimes there. So we can rule out global bonds. And then foreign bonds, these are going to be issued in a domestic market by a foreign issuer. So it would be if I'm here in the US and we're issuing bonds in Europe, that's how those are going to be. They're going to be subject to all the disclosure regulatory requirements of Europe. And so generally, the international law is going to be less strict and have less regulatory requirements than the kind of international law that Eurobonds are governed under. So we'll go with answer A. Question 48. With a discount rate of 3% per period, a 5-period zero coupon bond with a par value of $1,000 has a value of. So we've got a zero coupon bond here. So we're not getting any coupons. So essentially the value of this bond is just going to be $1,000 discounted back at 3% per period for 5 periods. All of our return on this bond is going to be in the price appreciation. So it's going to be pretty straightforward math here. So we'll just do 1,000 divided by 1.03 to the 5, which gives us 862.6088, which is going to round up right here to answer C. And so since it's no coupon, like another way to frame this is what would I need today to compound at 3% for 5 periods to end with a par value of 1,000? And so when we kind of back into it that way, this is what we need to kind of get to that $1,000 for this compounding period. Question 49. Who among the following is most likely to be the bond seller in the secondary market? So you've got the issuer, investor, or the underwriter. So looking at these 3, an underwriter is typically going to be involved in the primary market. So this would be an investment bank, for example. And they're going to be typically working on selling bonds in the primary market. So when the bonds are issued, they're going to be out there looking for people to buy those bonds on the first issuance. Whereas the secondary market is where after those bonds are issued, a year, 2 years, 3 years, however many years later, whoever owns that bond is going out and trying to sell that to a different investor, essentially. And then between issuer and investor, issuer is going to be kind of a similar answer as underwriter. they're typically only going to be involved in this secondary selling of their debt to raise capital at that primary market. So they're going to be issuing the debt, getting their capital back, and then they're not typically going to be buying and selling their own or debt in the secondary market. So this is going to fall on B, the investor. The investor may be buying from the underwriter or the issuer in the primary market, but then later on, 5 years down the road, maybe they need the money for something in their business or something personal. So then they might go out and sell that bond in the secondary market before it matures. So we go with answer B here. Question 50. Which of the following yield spread measures least likely assumes that the spot yield curve is flat? So we've got least likely assumes. So 2 of these are going to assume that yield curve is flat and 1 is not. So we've got G spread, I spread, and Z spread. So for A and B, we're going to rule these out since these do assume that the yield curve is flat. And so the reason that they do is because the G spread and the I spread are both looking at a bond or the respective instrument that it measures, and it's looking at the spread at a point in time on the yield curve. And so it's just measuring that 1 point on the yield curve. So essentially baked into that is the assumption that the yield curve is flat by only looking at 1 point on the yield curve. You're looking at the 5-year government bond relative to a 5-year corporate bond or something like that. Whereas for the Z spread, which is going to be our correct answer, does not assume the yield curve is flat. We're assuming and looking at the spread across different points on the yield curve in the Z spread, and then that's being baked into that calculation. So it's not assuming the yield curve is flat, it's taking into account the shape of the yield curve in its calculation. Answer C.